And welcome to episode 43 of the Twinsies podcast. My name is Lucas Cook. Do we do that still?
I don't know. It's like season 2, video episode number 2.
Yeah.
Here at Warbird, backdrop number 2.
Backdrop number 2. Test out a bunch
using
of
the iPad today instead of the webcam.
Yeah.
See what's up. See what's up.
Trial and error, the Dan and Lucas story.
And it's getting warm in here, so it's almost going to be trial by fire soon, because we're going to be sweating in this facility soon.
I'm sweaty.
It's 80 degrees today. It's going to be 90 this whole weekend when we play in Indianapolis.
And it's a very cliche thing to say, but we didn't really get a spring.
We had 0 spring.
We went from 40 and blustery to 85.
Yeah, it was a very abrupt switch. But here we are.
Here we are, sweating in the middle of an empty gym.
Spider season's upon us.
Oh, yeah. Do the spiders ever have an off season? They're on the grind 24/7.
They be murdering no matter what.
Yeah. Like mosquitoes have an off season, but spiders are always mid-season form.
Do you think there's like the whole little world they have, like Spider-Gram, and there's just memes? It's just like always
hashtag grinding.
Grinding. You see a spider like taking a selfie with like a fly that he mutilated. Yeah.
This morning's catch. There's a little picture of his web.
What is it called when they wrap something up? So like they get it and they like kind of like make it into
which is fascinating to watch.
Cocooning, but are they mummifying? They're not mummifying.
No. Embalming.
Yeah. There's no embalming fluid. But what
is there a word for that?
I don't know.
Listeners, text in, write in.
Call in.
Yeah, call in. The lines
Tell us
are
what
open.
it is that spiders do to their prey.
Yeah. So what you got, Dan?
We had a rough week as a sports team.
Yeah.
The 14U Senators.
Well, really the organization as a whole. So let's see. Last weekend we went 2-2, and then yesterday went 0-2.
Okay.
And then you guys had a rough week in that
we started 4-0, and then we went 0-4, and we got 10 runned in 3 of those games.
Yeah. Which part of what we're about to talk about is there's such a wild swing. I mean, we've had very few games that have been like nail biters. It's either been we're smashing someone or we're getting smashed. Mm-hmm. There hasn't been. I mean, there's been a couple. We had one last night, and I guess that's a little unfair of me to say, but it seems like in relation, like the whole 4-2 game is hard to come by. It's like 12-2 or 14-6.
Well, and I think like in the majors, if you lose 7-1, I feel like that's the equivalent of like 13-1 in youth baseball.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I don't know. Obviously, we didn't play well. We lost 3 games. We had like 7-run first innings in 3 of them, which is just crazy. But, like in high-level baseball, they make most of the plays. So when there's like errors in an inning, it's like 1, maybe 2. And only so many bloopers can fall in. Like only so many ground balls can like find a hole. But in youth baseball, you can miss 3 grounders in an inning. You can make 2 mental mistakes. You can throw 2 to 3 balls away. You can walk 5 batters, and you can give up 5 bloopers because
it can get out of hand
infielders don't have as much range. Like it's just there's so many more things that can happen.
Yeah, I was just trying to think. The last time I saw a 2-error big league inning. I mean, they're pretty infrequent.
Yeah, they're very rare.
Yeah,
so,
but it's just
I don't know.
Yeah, wheels, and then it's like inevitably you get. It just seems like I'll have a pitcher just crushing the zone, like looking really good, and then he'll get a ground ball that we boot, and then all of a sudden the pitcher like loses it, and like he'll walk a couple guys, and it's just like that stuff can stack up so fast.
Yeah,
and you're just like, oh man. And then the other thing is, and I might be getting ahead of a bit, but my guys want to win a tournament, right? Everybody wants to go win the tournament, but in order to win the tournament, your pitchers have to be really efficient because you can't have 60 pitches get you through 3 innings. It has to be more than that.
Yeah.
So we've had, so far early, we've had lower pitch counts because we're kind of breaking guys in still, and it's like it's hard for me to get 60 pitches for more than 3 innings, and then it's just like, well, we just don't have the arms to do that. So then it's like, if you want to win a tournament, you got to be more efficient.
We've been faced with the same, and the other thing that you never think about is how many times you see a 40-pitch inning in college or pro baseball. Not often, but I've been asking, hey, what's our pitch count? Oh, 33. I'm like, you can't have a kid throw 45 pitches and then send him back out the next inning.
Right, exactly.
It's just like there's a certain number where it's like, well, you're done for the day. And same thing with like 7 runs, and we just got bit by the first inning. Like I can't pull my starter with the bases loaded and 2 runs in the first inning. Like they don't do that in the big leagues either. Obviously, there's at some point you have to like preserve it and get guys going. But usually, when there's 3 or 4 runs in and there's a couple runners on, and there's maybe not 2 outs yet, that's when I start to get a guy going, and I tell him, hey, I need you in 3 hitters. So there's the guy up, there's a guy on the deck, there's a guy in the hole. You either have the guy in the hole if you can get ready, or you have the guy in the sewer. What's beyond that? I don't know.
What kind of hole is he
But
in?
at that point, you know, if things aren't going well, those 3 hitters can cash all 3 of those runs and then some. So then you're like, okay, well, you know, it's easier to say like you waited too long as a coach at higher levels of baseball because things don't develop that quickly. But you know, like in the first inning, you're either going to get through the first inning or we're going to give up 6 or 7 runs. Like there's no in between. Well, there's obviously in between, but I just can't pull my starter fast enough to say, oh, he had a terrible first inning, but we got it with only 3 runs. That's just kind of what we got bit by recently. And
yeah.
it is what it is. I don't know.
I'm running into a similar problem, especially with like my first guy out of the pen, where, you know, he comes in and has thrown 17 pitches and hasn't recorded an out, and it's just like, well, we're riding and dying by how he does right now. Like, can't pull him. He's got to throw. He's got to throw 40 pitches or whatever, and so that's been interesting as well. And I just had last night. So I've got a pitcher who has slowly been getting more and more efficient. Where, you know, his first time out, 55 pitches got him like 2 innings or whatever.
Oh, that's
and
the
then
norm, yeah.
And then, you know, I bump him up to 60 pitches and 65. And then last night he was his most efficient. And by efficient, I just mean he's pumping the zone. And of course, he goes, his first inning I think was 12 pitches, and then he gets 2 outs in the second inning on like 7 pitches. And I was like, oh man, he's like crushing it. And then, boop, 2-run bomb. And I was like, ah. The one time I tell him to be really, really efficient, he throws one right down the middle on it was like a 1-2 pitch or whatever. And I was like, oh man, his most efficient outing of the year, and he gives up a 2-run bomb, and it's like, that stinks. Yeah, but I'd rather have that than the opposite, obviously.
Yeah, because 2 runs is nothing.
Yeah.
Baseball. 2 runs is a walk. They're going to steal second. You know, ground ball to short. They can't make a play on. Single, and they steal second again. You know, it's just like 2 runs is like nothing. So
the other thing I've been noticing is we get away with a lot more too. Like for example, I had a guy last night. It was a 2-0 game. We were behind. He's on second base with 2 outs. This is my 2-hitter and one of my better players. And my 3-hitter hits this like mammo pop-up. Well, it wasn't too high, but it was this pop-up like that you knew was going to get down. But so I'm like watching this pop-up, and I look at my runner, who of course should be like rounding third at this point, and he's like halfway like dancing around. And I was like, "What are you doing? Like run! There's 2 outs." And so it drops in front of the left fielder, and he's standing on third base. And I was just like, "Oh my gosh!" And then the next pitch, wild pitch, he scores, and I'm like, we should have never gotten that run. That was like such a cop out, and but that's happened like 3 or 4 times, and I'm just like, I'm kind of like, shucks, that was a really good learning moment, and I still like ripped him when he got in the dugout, but it's like that point makes so much more sense if you are standing on third base when the inning's over. But that's happened like a couple times for us where we make some stupid mistake and then we end up scoring anyway.
Yeah, it's hard to teach them the game the right way and say, hey, like we don't need to steal third base with 2 outs because it's not all that valuable. When it is a lot more valuable in youth baseball because they're going to score on pass balls more and all this. But at the same time, I don't know.
I also had another good learning moment where, and this time we didn't score, which was problematic. But so one of my faster runners is on second base with no outs. And there's like a medium depth fly ball to right field. And he like gets on, he's like standing on second, kid catches it, does a hard fake, and then turns back around to the bag. And I was like, probably could have taken third on that. And then next batter, another pop-up that's like shallow center, and he does the exact same thing, like tags, does a hard fake, and then stays on second base. And so he gets back in the dugout, and he's like, hey, should I have tagged on either of those? And I was like, well, the second one, no way. Like, you would have gotten canned. On the first one, yes, absolutely. And the point to him was, imagine you had taken that bag, and so now you're on third with 1 out. Now that second fly ball, that's shallow center, probably scores him, realistically, because he was fast enough to score on it. So I'm like, you kind of got burnt on the first one. Like the second one we didn't need because you standing on third with 2 outs versus second with 2 outs doesn't matter. But it's just like little stuff like that. Sometimes it clicks in their brain because they get burned on it, and then sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, it's hard to, the one iffy one where it just comes down to the runner's instincts really is the one where it's a medium pop-up or like a medium, like almost like a blooper, shallow fly ball, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And they're on third. The question is, do I tag or do I go halfway? Because they have to figure that out for themselves most of the time, because the youth baseball ball's not hit high enough in the air where they can have tons of time to, third base coach say, hey, get back, you're going to do this. They have to make the decision pretty fast, but they just have to understand that if it's going to be caught and they can't score, then they need to be halfway so they can score if it drops. Because otherwise they scored neither way. If you tag and it's too shallow to score, you won't score if it drops and you won't score if it's caught.
Mm-hmm.
We ran into that the other day. And then that deep fly ball with a runner on second with one out, that's another iffy one. So obviously, again, at higher levels of baseball, guys hit towering balls into the gap or deep to right, deep to left, deep to center, whatever, where it's up in the air so long that it's not certain if it's going to be a double or if it's going to be caught.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to be on the warning track probably. So the runner's like, okay. And the thing is with the higher trajectory is when they go up and the guy gets a chance to get a beat on it, if he doesn't catch it, but because it's been in the air so long, it might land, he might pick it up, and then it's already on its way before the guy's even 2/3 of the way to third base, and now he doesn't score on that. So in that one, you got to ask yourself, it's really, again, just instinct on the runner, do I think he's going to catch it? And if I do, if I have I think he's got a better chance of catching it than not, then I need to be halfway. So if it does hit the ground, I can immediately, boom, I'm halfway to third already, I round third, I'm going to score. Because there's less advantage, obviously, tagging and going to third to get there with 2 outs, but we really can't have that ball fall, and it's a double
and
because
score.
the guy's running, obviously, the hitter's running, and then you don't score. That's the frustrating part. Those are really tough to read. Like, if they're hit on a hard line, then you probably need to check up and see what's going to happen because you can't just take off. But if it's up there in the air, then you got to kind of figure out, I don't know, because again, those ones just can kind of plop down like a pitching wedge on the green and not go anywhere. The guy just grabs it, and then you don't score. So those are tough because we had one of those like a week ago, and my runner asked me, and I'm like,
I don't have the answer for you, really.
Yeah, we'd love for you to score on that, but we know that if it drops, you might not, but he also might catch it. It's just really tough.
Yeah, and I think what you and I were discussing, what's been most interesting is the variability of on-field product at 13-14, where it's like, I've got a lineup that I can put out on the field that I think can compete with almost any 13U team around, but then they're also 13. So like sometimes they show up and sometimes they don't.
Yeah, 13 happens a decent amount of time.
Yeah, so it's like, I don't know, that's what's always been fascinating, and I like to just like sit and watch them in pregame warm-ups, and you can kind of tell like we're about to get beat. Just based on like kind of their vibe and how goofy they're being.
Did they eat enough boogers today? Did they eat too many boogers? They can be sluggish.
Yeah.
Like,
Our booger intake.
Did they eat enough boogers?
Way too much. And then sometimes they're kind of like locked in. I'm like, okay, we're gonna probably roll this team. So that's always interesting too. And they're like, they don't. And I think I can't remember if I referenced this on another podcast yet or not, but they are still struggling to figure out how to dial it in before the game starts. Where it's like, when you roll up into the park and it's 75 minutes before the game, like you don't have to be locked in yet because you got a long time to go. But now all of a sudden, like when I'm going through my throwing warm-ups and I haven't locked it in yet, it's like, it's getting a little late where you can't just roll into the dugout right before the first pitch and then go, okay, it's time to start playing baseball. You have to like figure it out earlier than that.
Yeah.
And so they're still kind of working on that where obviously they're 13, so they like talking about Fortnite and all that crap. But then it's like, we're also trying to win a baseball game, aren't we? So that's been interesting.
Yeah, and we had that conversation after losing our 4th straight in a row where I was like, hey, like, what do we need to do different? Like, A, I can't play the game for you. But B, when we show up, we have 75 minutes in pregame, which is longer than other teams. Like, we hit, you get balls off the tee, you get some live throws with our heavy balls, you get some with the line drive pro trainer. Like, you guys get enough swings in. We do fly balls, we do ground balls, and we do pop-ups because I'm phenomenal with a fungo. I'm just going to pat myself on the back. But we do all those things. We have like a pretty long, like I wear them out a little bit. And so it's like we get a lot of fielding. We stretch. We do a little arm care. We play catch. We hit. Like I don't know that we're missing anything in pregame. We keep it light. We're not like stressed. It's not this cranky atmosphere. It's just like, hey, we're here to play baseball. Guys get along. We have good team chemistry. So like when all those things are there and our practices are not unproductive, like we get a lot of stuff done in practice. So I'm like, guys, like, what is it that we're missing? And I don't know that anyone had an answer, so we all just kind of went around and picked one thing that we could improve on this week. Whether it was like, I'm going to focus on this on my swing, or I'm going to do this and work on my changeup a little more. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. But sometimes just like the product's just not there. I don't know. You prepare, you have your process, you have a good routine, you're in shape, and then you just go out and you suck because baseball's hard. I don't know.
Baseball's hard, and I think there's definitely an energy and a momentum to baseball where it's like you get one, like if we know like everyone's going to make one mistake in a game, and then all of a sudden you get that inning where everybody makes their mistake like sequentially, and now all of a sudden the team's put up 7 runs, and you're like, ugh, like, you know, a guy on the bump walked a guy, then our catcher had a pass ball, then our shortstop booted a ball, and then it's like those stack up fast, and now all of a sudden we're down 5-0. It's like, I don't know. You just need some guy to like be a stopgap and like stop the bleeding, but sometimes that doesn't happen.
Yeah, and we didn't get many hits the last couple games. The bats went conspicuously silent, but
which is another fascinating thing where your team put up like double-digit runs like 3 games in a row or something like that, and then all of a sudden bats go quiet.
1 run in 3 games.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but you know, you just try to figure out, well, like how much. I don't know. I'm not a yeller. Like, hey, we lost. Like, it's baseball. You guys stunk today.
Right.
Like, I don't know. Like, we prepared. We showed up. We weren't like silly. We weren't lazy. Like, we just lost a bunch. I don't know. It's sometimes baffling. It's like. And I've remarked in my other podcast that the last practice we had, I hit pop-ups for like 45 minutes.
Infield pop-ups.
Infield pop-ups. Like big league. It was swirl. It was like high winds that day. And we had just kids like behind the catcher, behind first base, and like all just spread out in the infield. So I could hit almost anywhere I wanted. And then someone has to take charge. And then we dropped 6 pop-ups. It's like pop-ups that are 2/3 the height at best of the ones that I hit. And at practice, after we'd done this for a while, I was like, you know what? I should probably have them doing other things. I feel like I've done this too long. I probably didn't plan my practice out well. We've probably done too many pop-ups, and then we dropped the most pop-ups ever. So I'm like, I don't know what else there is. And they weren't hard.
Like if someone,
it was just,
there was a Nostradamus person, and he was like, yeah, you're going to get 6 infield pop-ups. You're going to be like, okay, well, then I'm going to hit infield pop-ups for 50 minutes at practice. And you did that, and it still didn't work, so I don't know.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So, again, I think just hashtag 14 years old. That just happens.
Yeah.
But, you know, and a bunch of them, it was weird. It was actually probably more than 6. I think we missed 6 in fair territory. But there was the one our catcher missed that was, you know, back over in foul territory a little bit, and they come back in. We won over our dugout, third base dugout, where our third baseman sprints over. And then, of course, you sprint over, and they go, oh, it starts to come back, and he falls. That's something you don't figure out until you're a little bit older. Like, the physics of it just hurt your brain as a kid, because they'll go, like, sometimes up to 10 rows back, which 10 rows is only, like, 15 feet maybe. But they go a significant amount, because I remember watching from the bullpen, like, you know, the pitchers in minor league stadiums, they're, like, against the thing. So we can see the ball go over and then come back out. Like, it's remarkable, the physics of it, how they'll go pretty far over and then come back. So third baseman at that level, they know they don't have to sprint all the way over. They sprint cautiously close to the fence, you know, within like 10 or 15 feet, because they know it's going to come back. But if they need to go get it, they can still continue to close on the fence and then reach in the crowd if they have to. But you always see it with young players. They run over to the fence because that's where it is, but then it comes back and it goes over their head. So, you know, those happen too.
That reminded me of, just popped into my brain, where the game we lost in extra innings at our last tournament, we had so our center fielder, who's a good player, or he was not our everyday center fielder, but he was playing center in that game. This kid just smashed this line drive to center, and his first, I'm just like watching my center fielder, and then it just breaks in like 3 steps, and I just like put my head down and closed my eyes, and you know, I just heard our side of the stands like, oh god, and I just wanted to yell like, leave it, like don't even chase it, just leave it, because he's like, you feel so bad for him. He's like sprinting after the ball, and the kid's already rounding second, and you're like, oh man, but that is there's like literally the number one thing you tell outfielders is like, never on a line drive, never do that. Yeah, I just thought it was so funny. He's just so sold out on it, and then you just see his face like, oh my god. I was like, yeah, well, that ball's rolling forever.
Yeah, we had one of those the other day too. We had our left fielder. I can still picture his face, because it was like a hard hit fly ball. It wasn't a warning track. It wasn't a legitimate double. It was just like hit hard enough where if he immediately breaks back and takes a good sharp route to it, he probably catches over his shoulder. But it was like, yeah. And then it was just like, oh no, well, ball his turn to run now. So I was like, okay, well, that's a base clearing triple, I guess now. Or so that was part of it.
Yeah. But that's a good learning moment where that kid will know better next time, hopefully.
Yeah. That's the last fungo I'm getting. It's tough to hit line drives that carry. That's the one I try at the end of our pregame or our practices. I choke up on the bat, and then I just try to like.
Yeah, to try to get the backspin on them.
That's a tough one to hit.
Yeah,
and those are tough to read. And I tried to talk about this in another segment of my podcast, but I actually ended up deleting it. I talked for like 20 minutes and then deleted it by accident. But you kind of think like almost it's like a currency. It's like at the beginning you go, here you go, you're going to drop 14 pop-ups, so there's $1 for each one.
Right.
You're going to miss the cutoff man 17 times, and you're going to miss the steal sign and the bunt sign and the hit and run. Well, we don't do hit and runs, but it's just like they have all this, and it's like when you're 14, you miss 15 pop-ups, so there's 15. And then when you're 14, you miss 12, and then when you're 15, you miss 8. But it's just like you just know they're going to miss a certain percentage. Yep. Like you're just like, all right, give me the $1. We'll put it on the tab.
Yep.
Like I don't know. So I can't be that mad about it. Like obviously it's frustrating and no one wants to lose. But those are just execution things. Like if you're prepared and you're ready to play and you're giving an effort, like obviously at some point effort doesn't matter. Like everyone gives effort. The only thing that matters is results. That's not 14U baseball. It's not 16U baseball. But at some point, that is all that matters. So it's a matter of whether you can get to that point where when it really just does matter about results, which, high school varsity baseball was that point for sure. At that point, you gotta catch the ball.
Yeah.
But until then, it's just like, all right. I guess we just need more pop-ups, and then you'll start catching them at some point or whatever.
Yeah, I definitely think there's just like like you're talking about with the currency idea, there's like a prerequisite number of screw-ups. You just have to get them in. So how much baseball you play probably dictates how long of a time it takes you to get those in. But
yeah, because you can't cover that stuff in practice. It's still just like I talk about all the time, the mental bandwidth. Yeah, it just have so much they're trying to do and they're thinking about, and Fortnite's clogging up a large cog of their brain. And
right. Well, it's the same thing. Like, I had a kid, and I think I might have shared. I can't remember. I'm losing track of what we're sharing on these podcasts and whatnot. But we saw this kid throwing this like poopy curveball. It was like a little league curveball that pops up out of his hand and then just kind of drops down. And I had one of my kids get rung up on it, and he comes back in the dugout and he's like, "Lucas, how do I hit a curveball?" And I was like, "Oh well, how much time you got?" But I just told him it was one of those things. It's like you can't hit a curveball until you've seen a certain number of curveballs. You know what I mean? And so I'm like, well, here's what you're trying to look for. Like his curveball sucks, so what you should see is, his fastball will come up out of his hand a little bit, and his curveball will come up out of his hand a lot bit, and then you just have to stay back, which is like the easiest thing to say in the world, super hard to do. But I was just telling him, I was like, half of hitting off-speed stuff is just having seen off-speed stuff, because you just have no reference for what in the heck a curveball looks like. And so we've run to a couple kids who were throwing that just like garbage curveball, and they get guys on it occasionally, and it's just like, well, you see. Curveballs 1 through 25 get you, but 25 through 50 get you less, and then 50 through 75 you start to get it. So it just takes time. And the same thing goes with those like screaming line drives in center field. You off the bat, you have no idea what's happening. Like it's like, where's this ball? How hard is it hit? Like where's it landing? But what you can't do is freak out and sprint in. So you see enough of those, and you start to pick it up. You go, oh, this is what a smashed line drive looks like off the barrel. He just hasn't seen enough of those yet.
Well, and all of it's miraculous. Think about it. Like, you as a human being, like, an object has suddenly propelled your way at a certain velocity and trajectory, and you just, like, know how to run and go catch it. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And, like, throwing a ball, if you ever think about it, like, playing long toss, sometimes I ask myself, how in the hell do I just throw the ball 120 feet, hit the guy in the chest, and then he'll go back, and I'll still hit him in the chest from 250 feet. Mm-hmm. And then when he's really far out, I like know how far to throw it to get it to him. It's absolutely astonishing.
Yeah.
And then, but yeah, it's just like how many of those balls have you seen? So your brain like understands, oh, that's probably doing this, and it has to make that calculation so fast.
Yeah, that's crazy. Especially like in center where that screaming line drive that takes its first hop like 15 feet behind second base, or the screaming line drive that gets over your head. Like instantly at first, those look, if you're playing straight up center field, those look pretty similar. And so you're like, bah. And then you just, I don't know, like you said, it's a crazy calculation that your brain at some point learns, and you can make the adjustment. That's nuts.
Well, and I played outfield growing up, and I was a decent center fielder, but I stopped being fast enough to play center field in high school. And I played right field for my high school varsity team, and I absolutely just sucked at right field. Because those balls slice like the dickens. I mean, you know, 80% of hitters are right-handed, so they're hitting balls out to your right, and they're just slicing. I'm like running at the ball because as a center fielder most of my life, I was like, they fly pretty true out in center. They don't tail as much. And I'm running at it, and then like, oh crap, and it just like sinks on me, and then it goes by me, or it hits the ground because I think it's going to stay up like a line drive, but then it, you know, the spin takes hold and it starts to sink into the floor. It was just tough. I just like didn't adapt. I was not a good right fielder.
That's how our game ended last night, where it was like I wouldn't say lazy fly ball, but just like a standard fly ball to right field, and our right fielder was playing off the line a little bit because it was right-handed hitter, and you could see him sprinting over towards the line. You could just see the baseball like equally as fast slicing over the line and towards the line. You're just like, oh, that's gonna fall for sure. And it's like, yeah, that's crazy. And our center fielder got burnt on that a couple times, where you know that ball to the right center gap is just running away from him, running away. And rather than, he was kind of like at that 75%, which always, when you see an outfielder doing that, you always know they're going to get burnt. Where like the really good outfielders are just like dead sprint, getting to the spot first. And he was just drift. And then he had two balls that just missed his glove because of that reason. They were kind of tailing over to right center. And it's just like, yeah, I guess that's another one of those things you learn over time.
Yeah, the drifting thing is hard to solve. But yeah, I just think people take for granted how long it takes to be a competent fielder, where like you make every play that you're supposed to make. It's extremely, I don't know when that is. I mean, high school you get pretty good, but the quality of fielders in high school, like their range and all that stuff, is way diminished. But they catch like all the pop-ups for the most part. They don't catch nearly as many bloopers, like tweeners between infield and outfield, like their range. The difference in an infielder's range going back on bloopers is tremendously different in high school to college, and then college to pro ball. And then even like low levels of pro ball to high levels of pro ball. Like you just can't play shortstop or second base unless you're just, it's just crazy how far they go out. I mean, really watch a major league game next time. When you see a pop-up between infield and outfield, watch and just think about how far that shortstop is out there.
Yeah.
He will challenge a center fielder for a medium fly ball hit right at him. Because that's their job. Like as soon as it's hit up, they go and they sprint. They sprint. They find it. They swirl. If they get called off, fine. If they don't, they're just going to keep running into the outfield. I mean, they're 100 feet in the outfield by the time all those pop-ups are called they're called off. But yet the other day, one of our pop-ups hit over second base, landed 15 feet in the grass, and I'm like, that's got to get caught. But at the same time, 14-year-olds just don't catch that.
I was just going to say that nothing will teach you not to take outs for granted more than like 13, 14 in baseball. Where like even the routine ground balls, I'm just like, oh, thank God. And it's just like I say in the dugout all the time, I'm always like, I love outs. Like when we make plays,
outs are the best.
When we make plays,
I hate 3-2 counts so much.
Yes, yeah. I'm just like, there's ball 4 probably. Oh, he struck him out, thank God. But just like, there's nothing better than a cleanly fielded ground ball with like a solid throw to first, and you're just like, that feels so good as a coach. Oh.
Yeah.
But, I mean, just like my experience last year coaching our 16U team, and obviously your time in pro ball, you just, like, take that kind of stuff for granted. You just expect all those plays to be made.
Yeah, I mean, you watch TV, it is not a representation of the real world.
Absolutely not.
They just catch everything. Every ground ball that isn't a hit is an out. I mean, it's crazy.
Like you're saying, it's like it's not even the routine stuff. It's stuff that looks routine that really wasn't.
Like the throw on the run where the third baseman throws at a low, like a 5 o'clock arm angle. That's a routine play. He makes that play every time. And that's astonishing.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. When would you say that play to a shortstop's right, the one they backhand in the hole, that doesn't become a play until what, 16, 15?
Yeah.
Like the guys just don't. Like we have a good shortstop. And he'll get there, he'll backhand that ball, and then there's just nothing he can do. And unless he has a play at second, it's just like, well, you're not going to, like, that's probably not in your repertoire. Well, it's not in your repertoire now. It might not even be next year, 15 maybe.
Yeah.
Like when you start seeing shortstops that really have the arm to backhand that ball and then rifle it to first, like that's a tough play.
Yeah, and the speed of the game obviously changes, at the big league level. the ball, no matter where you are as a fielder, the ball is in your mid extremely fast. Either it's hit really hard at you, and so the hitter, you know, the average exit speed in the majors is like 88 miles per hour. So if that ball is hitting the hole for you as a shortstop, it's either through the infield and it's a hit, or it's in your glove very, very fast still. And that's how they have a chance to, like, make that play with great arm strength and all that stuff. But in, you know, younger levels of baseball, that ball hit to the hole just crawls there. The shortstop runs over with his lead boots there. He grabs it, then hucks it 47 miles per hour across. Now the runner is equally slow. He's very slow too, but still, it's just you don't have time to get him. And around 14U, they start to get faster for sure, and then like 16U, it speeds up again, and 17U gets much faster. But that's the other thing. The speed of the game is just so fast. In the college level,
well, yeah, because
pro level and the big league level, it's so fast.
The other thing is, I mean, think about the difference between a 13-year-old and a pro player, and their bases is only 10 feet apart.
I know.
Like, that's insane. Yeah. Like, guys ripping 94-mile-an-hour fastballs at the shortstop. It's just like, or like, I mean, like 94 off the bat. Like, that's insane.
Yeah, yeah.
Or like, even worse, 100-mile-an-hour, like one hopper, and those guys make that play. It's just mind-boggling.
Yeah, and so, you know, as I think as academy owners, we feel like we do a good job, and we want to have teams that just go 41-6 and just destroy everybody. But at younger levels of baseball, unless your team is just physically just way above everyone else, which you, in like a metro area, you can have that, and at like 10U baseball, you can have that. But it's, you know, at certain levels, it just, you can't be that much better than everyone else, because 12-year-olds are still 12-year-olds. They still implode. 13-year-olds still implode. And, you know, I think it's easy to win games outright when you just have a kid who throws so much harder than hitting speed that he just goes out there and just beats you, you know? Right. So you have a pitcher that can beat you every day, so that even when you guys play like crap, your pitcher just beats their other guys, and you guys just put up a bunch of runs or whatever. Really just the mismatched teams. But if your team's not like, if your team's very good, but only maybe a standard deviation better than everyone else, and well trained, you'll still lose a bunch of games because it's just baseball. I think drop pop-ups.
There's the depth issue as well, where, you know, I think most 13, 14 teams have a lineup they can run out there and just like beat someone by 10 runs, and then they go with their second lineup, and then you turn around and you get beat by 10 runs just because the depth isn't there.
You gotta stop burping, by the way.
Oh, sorry.
Like
be thankful, home listener. You don't have to smell my burps.
Yeah, can't smell it on audio. Gross. Well, that's all I got on youth baseball today. Anything else?
Nope. I've exhausted my youth talk for today.
All right. Well, we're going to sign off.
Yes.
This was Twinsies 43?
43.
43, everyone. Be back at you next week.
See ya.